Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. My name is Holly and I'm here from the Kauai Home Office to talk a little bit today about the Campus Housing Index. Before we get started, I want to take a quick survey here. Who here has heard of it before today? Okay. So most people in the room? All right, great. So the Campus Housing Index is a searchable benchmarking platform that Kauai just rolled out this fall. It's an initiative that we've been working on for a better part of a year. We hear benchmarking a lot in higher education. We hear it in business. We hear it in all sorts of areas of work across the world, really. So when we think about benchmarking, I just wanted to, kind of establish a baseline understanding. I found this quote recently related to benchmarking in the educational setting. As in surveying, benchmarking in education should be about discovering where we stand and learning about who we are and what we do by observing those around us. And when I saw this quote, it really made me feel like this is what the Campus Housing Index is, right? We're trying to get a sense of what our colleagues are doing. We want to know where we're at, and ultimately want to figure out how we're performing and how we can be better. So why the index? The association has been doing benchmarking research for quite some time. Those of you who've been active in a Kauai probably know that already. Over the years, they've administered both compensation and operations surveys. They've been very large at times. They've been on different platforms. And they've been a bit unwieldy for users in the sense that they weren't self-service, you couldn't really filter, and you really were dependent upon us to tell you what was important and what you could do with the information. So part of our strategic plan, those of you who are active probably know that we're really interested in making sure that we get those knowledge resources out, that we do it in a timely fashion and in a responsive fashion. We want to make sure that our surveys have good participation rates, and we want to make sure that we become the place for information about campus housing and residence life. We feel that the Campus Housing Index really answers that call of the strategic plan and that need that's out there. As I mentioned, it's a self-service platform. It will provide essential data. We know that already. It was developed over the past year, and we felt that the value and the functionality that it offered, and you'll see that in a moment, would really lead to better response rates and better than what we've seen in the past. So kind of as we move forward here, I wanted to give everyone a little bit of context about how this all happened, what were the parts, what was the process, all that good stuff. As you can imagine, this was a very extensive process. We wanted to do this right. We do have a research and education team at Kauai, as well as some wonderful members who are willing to help out when they can. So something that we really looked to do is that we looked at the other iterations of the salary and operations surveys that we used to administer. We looked for content experts, so we reached out to our members specifically and asked them to look. What's missing? What's outdated? What needs to be clarified? So all those questions you ask yourself when you're doing different iterations of benchmarking. We also had a beta tester team who represented different institution types in terms of size, region, different demographical information, different cultural information, et cetera, who really looked at it and figured out what makes sense for us to ask here. If you got a lot of marketing, that was kind of our objective. Who here got letters in the mail or emails or anything of that nature? That was the point. So if that happened, I'm very happy that that did. We had a very extensive marketing campaign, both at the senior level and the non-senior level. So we really tried to approach SHOs to say, hey, listen, you want to make sure you're participating in this. And then also folks that work for them, so they could put the pressure on and say, hey, we really need to be participating in this. Another thing that we did to really get the word out there, provide information as needed, was we provided a dedicated space for questions. So with a dedicated email account and a web page that's pretty comprehensive. I'm happy to say that we went live. So November 15th to December 22nd was our data collection period. We learned very quickly the value of a soft close versus a hard close. We actually extended our data collection to January 6th. Part of the reason for that was that people got really busy with closings, the holidays, all those things that happened towards the end of a semester. We knew people were hard at work, passing along collection worksheets, making sure they were getting data from other folks on campus. So we wanted to give a little bit more time to get that information in there. Right now what we're doing, or most recently what we did, was we were preparing for data release. So part of that was data cleanup. So for example, if we saw that there were some errors related to region within the profile section, we would go in and correct those things. We've been vetting our pricing structure because this is a subscription-based platform. We've been getting feedback on key performance indicators from our beta testers and research committee members and other members in the association who have served as champions for this project. And we've been working on reporting. Reporting in this platform is very dynamic. You're going to hear me say that often, and I'll define that in a bit. But there's a lot of different ways that you can receive reporting. We have question comparisons, so you can see how people answer questions, question by question throughout the platform. There are dynamic reports, which essentially mean that they update in real time. And we're also going to have static reports, and those will be coming soon. We'll have executive summaries for both the compensation and operations sections. So this is the exciting slide. Prepare yourselves. The official release was February 28th, which was Tuesday, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. So ACUI promised that by the end of February, we will release data. So on February 28th, which is the last day of February, we successfully did that. We wanted to honor that commitment. That was a great goal for us. We had enough time to do it. We feel really good about it. So if your institution participated or if they wish to buy access, they can do that now. And that is our dedicated webpage for the Campus Housing Index. Really easy and simple. After this presentation, if anyone's interested and kind of walking through how you would get there, I'm happy to do that with you. But it's pretty intuitive. So we've done the release. The next step is another stage of data validation. Those of you that know about benchmarking, it's a really integral part of making sure that we're asking the right questions and the right data was entered. Part of the results dashboard, which is what you're going to see now the data collection has concluded, is a section called Check Your Responses. And basically what that is that's a section of the data where someone entered numerical responses and the system auto-calculated different percentages. That's a section where a lot of people within a benchmarking platform would make a mistake because they're entering numbers. So we have that section really highlighted for folks to really take a look, make sure that things are accurate. We are asking people who participated to contact us if they see errors. If they're simple things, we can go in and correct those pretty quickly. If they're more extensive, folks will have an opportunity to correct those things in May. May is when data collection will reopen. So if you are from an institution that either didn't have a chance to participate or didn't participate to the level that they wanted, in May of 2017, we'll reopen and you'll be able to add data. You will also be able to edit what you've already entered. We're doing this for a few reasons. Number one, people want to get in there. They want to add more data. Number two is another step of validation, as I mentioned. And number three is really going to enhance our participation rate. So this is a fan favorite slide since I've done this presentation in numerous settings. So who participated and how did they participate? Our participation rate was pretty great. We feel really great about this. We were optimistic when we kind of, got on the tracks. We were hoping for a 20 to 30% participation rate, which for those of you that do benchmarking or research, that's kind of a sweet spot. We had 331 institutional accounts participate. Something to keep in mind is the Campus Housing Index is structured around institutional accounts. So while your account may have a number of users, right? So an SHO, several hall directors, maybe some mid-level staff, et cetera, and they can log in with their own credentials. There's one account for everybody. Their view may be a little bit different just because we have some things that are protected. So for example, the compensation section was identified as a section that was very sensitive. So only SHOs have access to see that section of the platform. So going back to the participation, 331 institutional accounts participated. So if we think about the ACUI universe, so we have around 1,000 members at any given time, depending on membership renewals and et cetera, et cetera. So if we think about 1,000 members as kind of a round number there, we have around 30% participation, which is great. If we think about all campus housing or institutions that offer it, according to IPEDS, there are 2,081 institutions that said yes to the question, do you offer on-campus housing? That's the broader universe, right, of schools that we would look to have participate. We're at about 15%. Pretty good. We're pretty thrilled about that. So as you think about this, we got a question about members versus non and whether you can access whether you are or not a member. The answer is yes. The answer is you can participate. We do reward members for being members and give them a discount, but you still can access this. Of our participants, 89% were members, and that included 11 international institutions, which is pretty good. We also had 11% non-members. What we did throughout the rollout of the platform was we wanted people to participate at least a 50% completion rate. That threshold was selected for a few reasons. Number one, it felt good in terms of they're putting a decent amount of data in here. The other part of that is that we needed something to identify as this is the base level in terms of you being a completer. Our efforts were pretty good. 77% of participants hit 50% or more. That included 91% members, 10 international institutions, and 9% non-members. We also did something to kind of pursue this a little further. We targeted some meaningful groups out there in the higher ed sphere. The reason we did this is because these folks could serve as champions for the project, right? So kind of that idea of snowball sampling. You're going to tell your friend and you're going to tell your friend, and then all the friends are going to participate, and all of a sudden we have a big group of people. One of the things we did is we targeted 5 large athletic conferences and said, hey, listen, get everyone in your conference to participate at least 50%. Not only will you have a lot of data in there, but we'll create a custom filter for you so that you can look at data using that lens. We also had a housing consortium approach us, and they said, listen, there's 9 of us. We would really like to be able to have a filter for us. Do you do that type of thing? And of course, we happily said yes, and we got all of them to participate. So this was another way for us to really approach a high participation rate and also at a 50% completion. So a grid here to talk a little bit more about participation. The biggest individual subsection of high participation was 2,001 to 3,000 beds. Okay, so think about that for a second. That means that a lot of the schools that participated were smaller, right? Almost 60% of participants had 3,000 or less beds. This tells us a couple things. Number one, it tells us the type of institutions that are participating. Number two, as we look at the IPEDS data, which is, again, all the schools in the world with housing in our world, right? We know where we can do better. Okay, so you can kind of see the ends, which is the total number versus the percentage on both sides of that. All right. Has anyone seen this before? Yeah? Okay. So this is what data collection looked like. This was the dashboard that you saw. 3 sections: profile, operations, and compensation. We did ask for folks to complete the profile section first. The reason for that is that's probably one of the most important parts. That demographical information is how we splice data, right? So we wanted to make sure that that got taken care of. We obviously also had the operations and the compensation. This view was as if I was an SHO, because I can see compensation. We also offered an access key if the SHO wanted to allow someone else other than them to get in here and enter data. So if they had that, they would see this as well. All right. Profile section here, something I wanted to point out.
Sorry, I had a question.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between SHO and CHO, or are they the same thing?
They are the same thing.
Okay.
So at ACUI, there's a movement to use SHO, Senior Housing Officer. And there's a number of reasons for that, including its more inclusive language. So as I kind of move through this, you'll hear me say SHO quite a bit. Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Okay, so in the profile section, we were able to do something really great. We were able to import IPEDS data. We want to do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it saved you all from having to enter more data than you needed to, right? The other thing is that your institutions, or any that have Title IV funding, which is pretty much everyone, they're required to report to IPEDS every year. So we knew that this was at least somewhat accurate, and they have a lot of validation structures as well for their data. So this is just a snapshot of some of the data that we imported. Degree of urbanization, Carnegie Classification Basic, which speaks to what kind of programs you offer, and setting, how residential you are, control, public-private, calendar system, et cetera, et cetera. So these are kind of the splicers to keep in mind as you're thinking about the index. There were open-ended options as well. Some of the open-ended items are here. I wanted to provide a snapshot of this as well so you knew some things that we asked. We asked about your athletic conference. We asked about total current occupancy on your campus. We asked about the number of off-campus beds. So how many beds are off campus but students typically live in them? And we also asked about distinctive characteristics. This was a check all that apply item. So this enabled people to talk about some of those things that are very distinctive about their campuses. Specifically, are you religiously affiliated, a land grant, an HBCU, all those things that matter in terms of your operations. So if you go back into your dashboard now, so those of you that participated or if you buy access, you will be able to see a view like this. This is a results dashboard, and this is actually real data, okay? I will tell you that the answers in this section are fictitious. We do have fake data in there so that we can do these types of demonstrations, but the aggregate numbers are real data from the actual platform, from the actual data collection. Some housekeeping here. As you look at this, when you see a purple answer, that is the response of the person that participated, okay? The other thing that I circled was that bar chart in the upper right-hand corner next to each of the items. That is the dynamic reporting feature. So what you're able to do is, for any given item, whether it's the profile section, the operations section, the compensation section, you'll see your answer with respect to all the others. And you'll also be able to click on that and automatically generate a PDF or PowerPoint slide that visually represents the answers. It's pretty awesome. So kind of an example of that. Let's go back for a second. If I just clicked on that, I would see the PowerPoint little tile and the PDF. I prefer PowerPoint, I click on it, and this is what you see for control, okay? I will tell you that most of the rest of this presentation was me just literally doing what you would be doing before a meeting. Someone asked you some questions about things related to your operations. You wanted some information about that in a PowerPoint presentation. I dragged it and I'm done. It's pretty amazing. So this is control. You see here, again, purple answers are mine. So that's a fictitious answer. The rest are the aggregate. In future slides, you will also see that reporting in the system is arranged by quartiles. So you'll see 25th percentile, median, 75th percentile. And then at the bottom, you'll see where your institution lies, okay? So in this case, this is what we just saw. 38% of respondents said they were from public institutions, 57% private not-for-profit, 4% private for-profit. Total bed capacity, this is a different type of chart. Again, we see the quartiles here. My organization is pretty big, right? So I'm at the 100th percentile. I'm the largest answer in this case. I said that I had 15,000 beds on my campus. 1707 was 75th percentile. The median was 744. 260 was 25th. Again, keep in mind, this is real data, okay? So my data point is fictitious. I have a fictitious institution, but all the rest of this is real. I see a question, maybe? No? Okay, we can come back to that. Keep thinking. So everyone knows what quartiles mean when you're looking at stuff like this, yeah? Essentially, median is the midpoint. 25th, that means that 25% or below. Median, 50% and 50%. 75th below, right? So again, I'm the highest data point on this particular chart. Total annual full-time undergraduate enrollment. Not surprising. I had a lot of beds. I also have a lot of students, right? So that makes sense. We did that one right. Again, you see the median, the 25th percentile, and the 75th percentile. Again, what this tells us is that we have a lot of smaller schools, right? Degree of urbanization. So where is your institution located? Are you in a city, a town, a suburb, rural? These are things that people might want to know, right? In this case, the user said that they were in a city. 45% of other users also said that. Yes?
So were these terms defined in the survey?
So this was actually IPEDS data.
Okay.
And so they had their own definitions. So we imported this information.
Okay.
Yep. This is an exciting slide for all of you. I made sure to circle it. Thought it'd be a very popular one here. CIHO was the most highly represented regional association for participation, which is great. 17% of our respondents were from CIHO, 16% from Nyakuo, 16% from Blukuo, et cetera, et cetera. These types of slides tell me a few things as the person working on the project. We're really happy with CIHO, that's the first thing, right? The second thing is we need to do better, right? Because we have some folks that didn't participate. So in our marketing and our approach after the fact, certainly in May, we need to make sure that we're reaching out to folks from those areas. All right. So we also talked about NCAA division classification. In this case, I identified myself as a Division I school. 47% of respondents said that. You can see the way that those all kind of parallel down. Calendar system, not surprising. Majority from semester schools, more percent there. Again, you see how those kind of hammer out towards the end there. These kind of faster, or I just want to give you a sense of what this stuff looks like. Distinctive campus characteristics. This is, again, one of my favorite items because it really allows folks to say, this is who we are. These are the cultural underpinnings that help us do our work. Again, this gave us some really important information that we need to attend to on our end. 55% that they didn't fit any of those classifications or characterizations. 17% religious. You know, my fictitious data said they were a land grant, flagship. Hispanic serving community colleges, all of those were represented. What wasn't represented were tribal college and HBCUs, right? So we need to do better at that. That's what that tells me. Right. We got this question a lot too. As we were creating our survey, folks wanted to know whether a housing department was an auxiliary or non-auxiliary. That matters in terms of our operations. In this case, my fictitious user said they were from an auxiliary. They were in good company. 65% of respondents also said that. 35 said they were non-auxiliary. I think this might be the last one. Management of residence life. 82% were in student affairs, 15% auxiliary, 2% different department. Again, real data gives you an idea of how you should view this data in terms of how they correspond to how you are. Also can serve as ways to splice the data later. All right.
Do you,
Yeah.
do you give an option to split and see what other department, or for them to kind of answer, if not one of these, like what is your department? Or is-
You mean an open-ended option?
Yeah.
We do not. Part of that is that within benchmarking, and specifically a system like this, it's very difficult to get meaningful data that way. So what we need to do is, depending on feedback, and we will be getting feedback from folks, if there are things that are not accounted for in the answer options, that's an indication to us that we need to create the option. Yeah. So if you see something like that, definitely let me know. Great. So to Kuai, we love what we call use cases. Does anyone else do these in their departments on campus? No? Okay. So I wanted to demonstrate how you might use this, right? So all those slides are really fun, kind of rambled through those. We got a sense of who participated. And I think that you're probably catching on to how this can be very functional for you on your campuses. But how might you actually use this in real life? The placement exchange is coming up actually next week. That's my shameful plug. You have some hall director positions to fill. It's been a few years since you conducted this search. Comparative data would be helpful. What are some things that you might want to know to structure and market your job description? This was a particularly important question months ago when FLSA was a hot topic, right? It's less of a hot topic now. It's kind of on, stalled, but it's still good to know. So some of the things that I pulled just based on my conversations with members, educational requirement, position classification in terms of FLSA, supervision and oversight, weeks per academic year on call, room and board, salary, and other perks. So those are some things that you might want to think about as you craft a job description, as you think about marketing it. It's also a way to anticipate questions from applicants as well. So if I am on SHO or someone else in the organization, and I want to look at that, I can use the Campus Housing Index to answer those questions, okay? If I have a premium subscription, and we'll get into the subscriptions in a second, I have access to 8 filters to use within the data, okay? Those are them there. Those pretty much correspond to the slides that I showed you earlier that were from the profile section, okay? So we have control, which is public or private, size and setting, regional association, degree of urbanization, state and province, basic, which is what kind of programs you offer, bed capacity, undergraduate enrollment, okay? So again, if you are a premium user, you have access to all 8 of those filters. If you are a basic user, you have access to 2 filters, and those are control and region, okay? So that's the essential difference between basic and premium is the filtering. You have a higher capability at the premium level. Something to keep in mind, if you have available filters, 8 there, you can use them in combination, all of them in combination. There's no restriction on that. The only time that becomes a problem is if your yield is too small. So I circled down there, your filter settings created a subset of 38 organizations. Our threshold is 7 institutions. So if you were to select, a hodgepodge combination, depending on what you really wanted to see, and it got to less than 7, you get an error message and they'd say, sorry, you can't do this, okay? For the sake of example, let's pretend we're going to use the basic settings. I selected public and CHO. Sound good? All right. Okay, so no surprise here, right? This is pretty standard. You'll notice that the purple is a response, so kind of ignore that. But in terms of this user, they had answered that for a live-in professional, the graduate degree requirement was a student affairs, higher education, or closely related field preferred, okay? And that was the majority, 57% said that. We see the 31% that they required that, and then we see the 9% said any graduate program, right? We see these descriptions all the time. That's pretty much what it looks like. But this tells us some things, right? It tells us that most people are saying this within CHO public institutions for this position. It also tells us that we might consider not doing that. Maybe we want to move over to required. A decent subset said that too. How do we classify your full-time living professional staff? In this case, I said that my institution pays them on an exempt basis salary, okay? So that was my fictitious institution. Again, this is real data though, keep that in mind, not my answer, but the rest of it. 64% of public CHO institutions during our data collection said that they classify their full-time living professional staff as exempt paid on a salary basis. Keep in mind when data collection was. It was November, December, right? Keep it in mind. So it could be a little bit different once we go in and people do editing. But for right now, this is what we know. We also see that 25% of public CO institutions do not exempt paid on an hourly basis, and 11% do not exempt paid on a salary basis. This is kind of a biggie though. Applicants probably care about this. If they understand FLSA, they care about this, right? And we hope that they do. All right. Average number of paraprofessional staff supervised by a live-in staff member. Again, real data. I lived in. I cared a lot about how many people I oversaw. In this case, I'm a big institution. Remember that. I said the average number of RAs, CAs, whatever the acronym your institution uses, was 70. And my institution was pretty high. But keep in mind, the aggregate was smaller schools, so not terribly shocking that there's a discrepancy there. The median was 12. 75th was 16. 25th was 9. But these are my peers. Again, this is public CO institutions. Average number of residents overseen by live-in professional staff. This is really interesting. Now I have 250 as my average number of residents. Now there's probably more of me, right? And I'm a big school, probably more live-in staff. Maybe there's some different structures going on that allow for a less of a yield that way. But you can see here that I'm doing pretty well. This might be something that I really tout in my description or as my conversations happen with applicants. Like, yeah, you oversee a lot of paraprofessional staff, but you get a lot of intimate time with your residents, right? You get to spend a lot of individual time with them. You don't have a ton to kind of chase after. Another big one, weeks per academic year, your full-time live-in professional staff are on call, right? They want to know this. In this case, my answer was 10, right? So that's my data point. I'm 71st percentile. So kind of at the higher end, but not egregious. The 25th percentile was 5, 6 was the median, 11 was the 75th percentile within CHO public institutions. Types of living arrangements. People care about their quality of life, especially millennial staff members. They want to know where they're going to be living. In this case, this was an answer all that applied. I said that I offer a 1-bedroom apartment, and I also offer 2-bedroom apartments. I'm in good company with the 2-bedroom apartments. 97% of public CO institutions said that that's what they offer their professional live-in staff. If I offer an efficiency, I probably need to rethink that, right? Another hot one, board compensation, that you provide a live-in professional staff. I answered that I provide a cash equivalent or institutional dining hours. Pretty even here, right? Can ignore the fact that some people don't offer professional staff. No one said that within CO public institutions. We see that 25% offer a full meal plan though. That's almost even with us. We gotta rethink that, but that's within our budget. If we're competing against another public CO institution, and that's what they offer, and this is what we offer, we may want to reconsider that. Maybe not, but good information to have. Professional live-in staff member average annual base salary for this position. So I said I'm salary basis, so this is not shocking. I'm paying my folks what the law required or the standard required, $47,500 because I'm exempt salary. That CO public institutions, I'm at the high end. I'm at the 83rd percentile. The median was around $33,000, which means half are below that and half are above that. 25th percentile was just under 30. Again, real data. This is my favorite slide of all. When I was living in, I wanted my dog with me. A lot of professional live-in professionals want this. This is one of those things that makes a home feel like home, right? In this case, I said pets are not allowed on my campus. People have allergies. I don't want the havoc. I don't want destruction. The answer is no. Well, my peers are doing something a little bit different. 92% of public CO institutions allow their live-in staff to have fish. 61% allow them to have cats or dogs, et cetera, et cetera. So if I want to be more competitive in this way, and some campuses may be able to do it and some others can't, but this is one thing that you could consider in terms of maybe, bumping up that quality of life. Are full-time live-in professional staff allowed to live with domestic partners regardless of gender? Another quality of life issue. In this case, I said yes, absolutely. And 81% of my public CO peers said the same thing. 19% said no. All right, is everyone's mind blown? Amazing, right? So as we think about this, and that took me not a long time to put all that together. So think about that from the standpoint of you are trying to justify adding more live-in staff and the costs associated with that, and decisions that you're making so that you are an attractive employer for those folks. That is the type of information that you could bring to a meeting, to your VP. All reports are filterable. Again, updated in real time. Something else that is coming soon is we are having executive reports created for both the operations and compensation sections. These are static, meaning they reflect a moment in time. All right, so I mentioned subscription and access levels earlier, so I want to make sure that we go over that so everyone understands. Year one access levels have two types, okay? There is the basic subscription and there is the premium subscription. If you completed 50% or more of the platform questions, whether you are a member or not, you get free basic access. That means all reports, that means 2 filters, and it's free. If you didn't complete at least 50%, there is cost involved. We also provided basic access free to international institutions, regardless of their participation. And the reason for this is that our system's a little bit different. And so we wanted year one to try out and make sure that they could participate at the level that we needed for that. Premium subscription, which was the 8 filters. The difference between the two is just the filtering. Pricing is based on completion and membership. So in other words, did you complete 50% or more of the platform? If the answer is yes, it's discounted. Are you a member or are you not? In that case, it's discounted. Okay, so there's kind of 2 levels. In that case, you get all the reports, you get 8 filters, and the possibility of the 9th. Okay, the 9th is the peer cluster filter, which is a filter based on pre-identified affiliate groups. So for example, if you work with 9 other institutions in the region and you really benchmark across for each other, maybe you have a local event that you have, a meeting that you have every year to talk about different matters related to your operations, but they're kind of your cohort that's maybe not formalized in a way, we can create a peer cluster filter for you, okay? The requirement there is there have to be at least 7 of you, and you have to have premium access for that, okay? All right. So next steps. As I mentioned, the platform is going to reopen in May. Who here did not participate in the Campus Housing Index? This isn't shaming, I'm just asking. Okay. Would you want to, do you think, if you had the opportunity? Yeah? Okay. So if you wanted to, you could wait until May, participate, and if you get 50% or more, you get free basic. And if you wanted to move up, you get discounted. You know, for folks that feel like they kind of missed the boat on that, you're not being punished for it, right? You will have the opportunity in May to kind of rejoin everyone else with that. If you want it earlier, so if you want it now, because it is available, you'd have to pay for it. Okay. When the platform reopens, as I said, part of that is part of data validation, making sure that things are accurate, making sure that you can review things. Part of it is getting that participation rate up. We also need to go through a review process. So this was a pretty big undertaking in its first year. Benchmarking is an iterative process, right? So we want to get better every year. We want to look at our procedural changes. So when did data collection happen? Was that the best time? I suspect that some people would say no, just because it was at the end of the semester. So maybe we need to bump that up earlier. We're already talking about that. What needs to be edited, added, all those good things. So when you're in there, if you see an item that's not in the list and you're like, why didn't they ask that? that's something that you should communicate to us, right? So this data is only valuable if it helps you, and we want it to help you. So if you don't see something, or if you have questions about why something isn't represented, that's a conversation we definitely want to have with you and make sure that we incorporate it if we can. The other thing is key performance indicators. Maybe we don't include one within our reports. If that's the case, it's not the end. We can talk about including it. So that's another conversation piece that we would want to have with participants. Okay, I wanted to leave time for questions because most folks have a lot. So are there questions?
How long do you have that? Is it an annual subscription kind of deal instead of, is it a year from when you pay, or is it like a calendar year and years when you pay?
That is a great question, and that's something that we went over quite a bit. We've had meetings for a year about that because we want to be fair, but we want to make sure it makes sense, right? So it's on a calendar year cycle. Okay, so ending December 31st of whatever that year is, right? You're following the data. So at whatever point you buy it, it's until that point. Make sense? Yeah. I can't think what else you might want to know about that. Oh, this is another important point. So first year, obviously, there's only 1 year data there, right? Well, in subsequent years, there's going to be hopefully a lot of years of data. When you buy a subscription, you have access to all years of data. So that's not really relevant to year 1 because you only have 1 year, but in year 2, year 3, et cetera, you'll be able to see all years.
I've seen lots of information about the campus housing index since the fall.
Yes.
And maybe I just blanked out on the premium subscription rate because I saw free if my institution completed 50% or more. Premium subscription rate.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the year 1 pricing model. Okay. So again, we reward membership and completion. Okay, because if you're a member, there's got to be member benefit. If you're a completer, we want to encourage you to continue doing that. This is a typical model for us in terms of the differences in prices. Just to kind of start off, broken up as US member, non-US member, and non-member. And the reason why non-US member is included there is different than US member is simply because in year 1, we're giving non-US members free basic access regardless of their participation rate because it's kind of a test cycle. How much can you participate? So that's kind of us being fair and making sure we're being inclusive. Back to this, if you are a completer, so being a completer means you've completed 50% or more of the platform, you get free basic access, which is all reports and 2 filters, control and region, okay? If you are a non-completer and a US member, you pay $725. Again, non-US member, free, non-member, if you're a completer, it's free. If you're a non-completer, that's your price. Okay, looking at premium, again, the structure completer, non-completer, right? So if you are a premium US member and you're a completer, you pay a little over $1,000 for access to the premium. If you're a non-completer, you pay more than that. It's about a 40%, I think, increase, 40 to 50% increase. Non-member pricing is just the same at premium level. So we gave you free at basic, at premium you're paying just like other members. Non-members and you're a completer, you pay 50% more than a member completer. And that's a typical upcharge based on membership through our pricing structures. And we feel that that's fair. If you're not completer, non-member, you're obviously paying the most. So kind of the big takeaways there, we reward completion and membership. Members get 50% discount. Subscriptions are purchased annually and based on the calendar year. And subscriptions include access to all years that are into like 5 years. That's a pretty good value. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm not a stats expert, but I'm remembering something from school. Just to give some weight to the data, is there some, how representative of the larger sample is the information? Chi-square analysis, is that something that you could be maybe talked into adding just to help give us a little strength as we talk to our VPs about, for example, the need to adjust salaries based on national data?
So, of course, there's more sophisticated data analysis techniques, right? So that's something that you're talking about right now. I think with survey research, one of the other things that is important to point out is here's what my institution is in terms of different criteria, right? This is how many beds we have, we're private, whatever those identifiers are. And this is how many of those same schools are also participating. And that's information that we do have in here that you can see yourself, right? So, you know, when we went at the beginning slides, you know, you can see your answers with respect to all other answers. And you could say, hey, look, you know, I'm one of, you know, 50% of users that's from this type of institution. That information will also be in our executive summaries. So letting everyone know who the participants are, really broken down into those categories. So you can see those really nicely. But that's a great question, but that's how you probably do that. I mean, you can, I mean, we're going to provide it, but it's the great thing about this is that you don't need me, right? So the great thing about this is you can be at your house at like midnight and be curious about something and go in here and put a report together and say, this is why this is important. This is why this is important for me. Now, if you haven't bought it yet, that's the only issue is that you don't have access to that information. So I'm guessing that maybe, are you saying this from the standpoint of this is why the information is valuable, or from the standpoint of this is why we should buy it, or both?
More
The first one? Yeah, I mean, I think that that's going to answer that question for you. Yeah.
When will the executive summaries come out?
Those will be out, they're scheduled to be completed in April and out by the beginning of May at the latest. So.
This is kind of related to his, or.
Yep.
Say if you're considering purchasing,
Mm-hmm.
is it something that OQI would share? How many people would fit your filter? You know, if I'm looking at schools in this, you know, in the SAC, or obviously have that are public, that have less than 1,000 beds,
Mhm.
that are in the state of Georgia, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
deciding between, hey, should I get if I answer 50% and get a free version versus $1,000, kind of that to help determine if it's, that makes sense?
Yeah, so you're saying beyond the public, private, and also beyond region, right? Because you'd be able to see that with basic access.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see why we would keep that secret, right? So, you know, this is about making sure that you have what you need to do, what you need to do, not about, you know, pushing you to a higher level if you don't need it. So, of course. Are there any other questions?
Where did this just get announced on the 28th? Or people who participated, do we get emails from you, or what happened?
You will be. So with a system like this, it is very complex. This is what we're learning. And what we're trying to do is phase our release. And the reason for that is that the first thing I would say is we want you to get in there and start playing around. Okay, so that's important so that if there are any glitches, we can catch them and try to, you know, remediate those as soon as possible. It is available on our webpage. So if you were to visit the webpage, you would see that it's available. You'd be able to get in there and play around and do whatnot. This week, we were just kind of staggering the release just to make sure that our bugs were out. So on Monday, you should see a bigger push. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer questions after this as well. I'm happy to log in and let you kind of see it. So please feel free to come and, you know, grab me after this. But otherwise, if you have any questions and you think of them, my name is Holly again. I work at the home office. I'm happy to answer those. You're welcome to call. You can email me at holly@akuai.org. akuai.org email address as well. I monitor both, so it'll get to me. Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.